Hi folks, this is Vince with Dad's Gaming Addiction, and welcome to the DGA Awards for 2017. Today I'll be listing my top 10 favorite board games. Just like last year, this in no way is a definitive best of list. There is absolutely no way I could claim something is the best because A, everyone's got their own opinion, and B, I don't own every single game out there to know if something I have is better than something else. So this is more of a top 10 favorite list as at this point in time. Though a small difference between last year and this year, I'm only listing games that were not listed on the previous year. So if I had it in the top 10 on the previous year, I won't mention it again this year, but I will list out ones after the list is over of the ones that I wanted to mention but couldn't. So starting with number 10. Recently I covered this one, Constellations. It's a beautiful game. I gotta say, it is great to look at, very educational. In fact, the reason it is so educational, that's why it's on this list. I mean, granted, its gameplay is relatively simple, it's family friendly, all that's good. But what really drew me to the game was the instruction manual and how much data and how much learning that you could get out of that manual. So in addition to being fun and family friendly, it's very educational, and that's a great combination, and I don't see that a lot. So Constellation gets number 10. Number 9 is Las Vegas. Another game I played this year. I think it might be older than this year, but I think I started playing it this year. At Las Vegas, oh, and that's another thing. This isn't like, these aren't games that were released this year. They could have been released whenever. I don't own enough board games to only single out 2017 release dates. Las Vegas is number 9, and I like that game. Even though it involves dice rolling, there's a little bit of strategy because there's dice placement. Whenever you roll dice, you place numbers into different, numbers. There's 1 through 6, and you assign dice trying to gain control of these numbers. And each of those numbers has a random monetary value associated with it. So the winner of that number will get the money. And some numbers are going to be more valuable than others, depending on the round and different things like that, and luck, random chance. So I like the fact, even though it involves dice rolling, there's a lot of strategy involved with what you're placing, and if you're including a mystery third player, like if you're playing a 2-player game and you're introducing a mystery third player, you can use like the neutral dice to mess up your opponents. There's an extra strategy element there. Number 8 was Race for the Galaxy. I have both the board game and the digital version. I prefer the digital version just because it's easier to get all the math right. I'm still relatively new to it, but basically, cards in your hand can be played, but they also serve as currency. So you have to decide what cards to spend to play the cards that you want, and which cards to, what cards to spend, what cards to keep, basically. And there's a number of different actions, and then if you take the action, you get a bonus, but you can piggyback on someone else's action should they choose it. Really cool game. Qin, which is Q-I-N. Great abstract area control game of sorts, a lot of strategy. It's also very simple, but it's not so simple that it's not like checkers, okay? There is a little bit more thinking involved with Qin than there is with checkers, but at the same time, it's simple enough. It reminds me a little bit of a choir in the sense that you've got different colors that are fighting for area control. So Qin was number 7. Number 6 was Fauna. Fauna is another educational game that I really liked. It's something that Ida Lee, Vinny, and I played this year. We actually recorded a gameplay session on camera, and that game involves you having to guess the attributes of the animals that are drawn from the deck. Think like Trivial Pursuit style deck of cards. You pull one out, it has stats on it, but you can't see what it is, what the stats are. You can see what the animal is, but you don't know what the stats are. Then you have to place bets on where you think, its height is, or its length, or where it's located in the world, that kind of thing. And players get points for accurate guesses. Number 5 is King Domino. King Domino is another, I think, new one this year. King Domino is a drafting game that it's also like a kingdom builder, but it's very simple. It's like games are generally like 20 to 30 minutes long, if that. If you play very quickly, you can get through it very quick. And but the trick is you've got different terrain types like sand and water and forest, and you're trying to put your kingdom together in such a way that it has to be in the limit of a 5x5 grid, but at the same time you're trying to get all the terrain types together so that you can score more points. And these terrain types tiles also have crowns on them, so the more crowns you have of a territory or of a terrain, and the more tiles that you fit together of the same type, the more points you get. So there's strategy involved with the drafting process, and there's strategy involved with the tile laying, building your city, sort of like in Alhambra. But this game is much simpler than Alhambra. Number 4, Trambon, and this is another game like Race for the Galaxy, where cards serve a multitude of different purposes. Trambon, they can be money. They can serve as passengers. They can serve as creating lines. So cards, I think, have 3 different rules in this game, and trying to decide which one is appropriate for the situation on hand is the challenge. And it's a 2-player only game, though, for those of you that don't like 2-player games. But it's an excellent 2-player game. Number 3, Airlines Europe. This is a classic. I love this one. Instead of players having a color, you pull out the game Sorry, you choose a color. You pull out this game, you choose a color. This game, you choose a color. Not this game. Everyone is just a company, and the colors represent the different airlines. And anyone can affect any of those airlines however they want by trying to expand them around the board. And the trick is to have the most stock cards of the most successful airline, or the most successful airlines, as possible in order to get the most money at the end of the game. So it's a great stock-esque kind of game. Number 2, The Builders Middle Ages reminds me of Splendor a lot, only a slightly different version. In The Builders, like in Splendor, you can gain cards in The Builders Middle Ages to help you build other cards. You can build these tool cards. They have less victory points associated with them, but you can use them to help you build other cards, sort of like in Splendor. So, yeah, but I like this because you can draft people you can buy people or employees from the middle of the table, and then you can assign those people to various buildings that you're trying to construct. You gain money as you go by building these things and victory points. So it's a little bit like Splendor, but it's also a little bit different. But yeah, that was number 2. Number 1, Lords of Waterdeep. This is a fantastic worker placement game. I wouldn't say it's the easiest, but because there is a bit of a learning curve, what with owning buildings and all the different locations that you can assign meeples to, the rules behind intrigue cards, and different things like it's easy to miss something. And there's also expansions with that game that make it even more difficult. There's corruption and all that. But in terms of theme, like this game is, Lords of Waterdeep is great to look at. It's fun to play. It gives me that World of Warcraft feeling, from the PC game. It gives me the feeling that I'm out questing, but instead of me being the warrior or the cleric, I'm the guy behind the scenes pulling the strings and sending these people out to do things. That's how I felt anyway. And games are really close. Every time I play this game, it usually comes down to who gets the least number of mandatory quests. Those things stink. But anyway, Lords of Waterdeep was number 1. Fantastic game. There were some games that I wanted to mention but couldn't because I mentioned them last year. That was The Last Spike, which is a game like Acquire. Ticket to Ride, classic. Stockpile, excellent stock market game. Star Wars X-Wing, you can tell behind me I've got a number of X-Wing miniatures, and you've seen all the videos. I love X-Wing. CV, it's like the game of life but with dice, and it's on steroids, so there's that. And then lastly, Splendor, which again I wanted to mention, but I mentioned it last year. I think it might have been number 1 last year, I can't remember. But The Builders Middle Ages is much like it. So there you go, folks. That was my top 10 favorite board games for 2017. Thanks for watching, and I'll catch you next time.